And he's gonna be along probably, he said he could be around, be close to 6, I think, before he gets here. All right, so no adjustments. And I need a motion to approve the minutes from March 20th.
So moved.
Eric,
Yes.
and that would just be, I think I was the only one here. Can we do this?
Let's see.
I was technically there, I just wasn't on the committee yet.
Yeah, you're right.
So you can vote, and if you want to.
Everyone could vote. I
Why
suppose.
can't you second it? You don't have enough votes. Is that what you're
That's
saying?
what I'm asking. I'm happy to second it, but, I just want to make sure we can actually vote on it because,
The only people here last time were Melvin, Eric, and
You're not gonna get a majority.
Right.
You're right.
unless people.
I was in attendance, I just was not.
he will
on the
vote yes,
committee.
he was here. So 1, 2, 3, that should do it. Sure. So all in favor? We got 3. And an abstention, Rachel? Yes. Is there,
I'm gonna hand out the warrants.
Okay.
There is only one payroll warrant because last time I apparently gave you the March payroll.
Do we need to sign the pen, correct?
Yes, please.
Can I get one?
What is
So,
this? What am I doing?
we're just signing them because that's what's in the packet that we're gonna look at,
Yep.
and you're just signing that you've seen it.
And not everyone needs to.
Yeah, you
just
don't,
we need
it's
3
not
signatures.
necessary. All right,
Just an audit requirement.
You said it has to be in pen.
It's preferred.
I borrow that pen.
They pass the pen.
Okay, so I'm just signing where it says finance committee,
yeah,
and then on all of these?
yes.
Okay.
In the same line.
I don't know if that matters as much.
Doesn't matter on you. I'll be doing that speech. 2 weeks from
Good
now.
practice now.
Yeah, I love just like randomly signing papers that I have no idea.
It'll be a
You're
problem.
obligated
It'll
to
be a
pay
problem for you later.
All right, well, those are going around, we can take a look at the first register here, which is dated somewhere around, checks dated around the 6th of March. And we pretty much just, some of y'all are new here, we just kind of just scan through it and ask any questions that we might be concerned about what we're seeing. But you'll get to know all the names very
Okay.
quickly because it's usually we pay the same people every month. Yep. But if anything jumps out that you're like, what the heck is that? Then you
Yeah,
can
It's large sum.
question that.
I promise not to make the Viking joke.
So I'm looking through page 1.
And this is just from since the last meeting or for March, or I'm sorry, I think I missed.
So there's gonna be 2 sets of them.
Okay.
So it's for the 2 payroll, AP runs that were
Okay.
in March.
Okay.
Sometimes there's 3, depending on how the month runs, but we do it every other week.
Okay.
Page 2. Huntington Public Capital Corporation.
That's the new bank that owns our node on the lights. When we had all the new lights in the school, they changed banks. So once a year.
On page 3.
QBS, I don't remember what that one is.
It's a training company. It was paid for out of grant money.
4. Let's ask about these treasurer state of Maine.
Their elevator inspections.
One elevator cheaper to inspect than the other.
Yeah.
I think it is actually the lift that Fred should. So it's not a true elevator, but it has to be inspected.
Page 5. You know you want to say it.
I
It's
didn't
right
say
at the
nothing.
top.
I promised I wouldn't say it.
But it was only 15
It's
miles.
only-
I can't say it, so.
Waldeboro utility must be for the bus garage?
No, we're not on, we're on
Not even garage. Or is it Miller School?
at Miller School.
Miller
Sorry,
School.
Miller. Yeah. I knew it was one of those.
Know why I didn't
name
think of
wasn't
that.
coming. Middle school, high school is not.
The Midco School Technology, is that just like is that paying out for?
That's our monthly payment to be part of the Midco School Technology Pro for our students.
Okay.
And, the, debt service on that makes up the bulk of it.
Okay. How many districts are a part of that school?
So it's like Camden, Rockland, Madomic, Vinyl Haven.
St. George.
or-
I think you're right.
Okay.
Camden, Oceanside, and Madomic are the 3 primary sending schools to that campus. The island schools, at least one of them has a program on the island.
Lincoln Academy
Mm,
goes to Midcoast. They send buses over there.
Oh,
Yeah, they probably send students in different directions depending on the program offerings.
Yeah.
I could actually, I could look at what Carrie sent me. So there's RSU 13, St. George, SAD 7, SAD 8, RSU 40, 5-town CSD, and Idlesboro. I don't,
7 and 8. They're both
What, David?
Probably.
All right, I'm on the second set dated March 20th. I'm just trying to log into that.
somebody's having.
mhm.
You have to pay the count me in Is that the
I believe that's the consulting work that,
consulting?
she's doing at Miller School. Is she working with you, Jess Anderson?
Yes.
Yes.
That's being paid for with our, tier 3 fund.
Page 2?
What's the John Murphy Homes? What is that?
That's just the parent name for one of our special purpose private schools.
Oh,
Let's get the kids outdoors.
I actually don't know. I can look that one up. I think it's a grant funded program, but take a look. I knew you'd find one. I didn't know.
Warren was doing some kind of program about
That's,
walking or out, some kind of walking program. I'm wondering if that has something to do with that one.
it is, it's an outdoor program for children. I'm just not sure what school's doing it. I'll look it up.
Page 4, Julie relaxes.
That was a program at Prescott
Oh,
and it was paid for out of a grant.
down at the bottom of page 5 is Brooke Simmons. Please don't-
All
please don't anyone
collectively,
tell her I
hope she
said that.
cashes this one, please. Payments that makes.
All right. Is there anything else on the warrant? On this sheet? All right, we can take a look at the financials for the month ending March 31st. First page is revenues.
Please note the red revenue is favorable.
Red is good on revenue.
Yeah, me care, almost 300,000.
Yeah, that's,
7,200 already.
What do you think that's projected to reach by the end of that? This one,
There, I think there's another 100,000 coming in this month. Probably closer to 500,000.
amazing.
Much better.
What is that for? What are those, what's that reimbursement for?
The schools get reimbursed for the services that we provide for children who qualify for main care that are in special education programs. It's a pretty small subset of students, but it's for, their, BHP services, so the ed techs that support them, the speech pathology, the occupational therapy, physical therapy, social work, I think, and BCBA, which I don't quite know what they do, but they're part of their supports.
Okay. And then kind of rolls in throughout the year, or is it?
It has to be submitted.
Yep.
By the people in those programs. It goes to the state, and then the state does what the state does, and then they send the money back to us.
Yeah.
Down into the expenditures under field trips. Do we know if the middle school has any other field trips planned this year?
They generally do what they call community service, right at the end of the year. Their field trip line's a little high this year because they've been doing, some health programs where they go to the Y and the health teacher does cooking and stuff. So we'll probably move some money from somewhere else within their budget to cover that, so they can do their end of the year. A lot of their end of the year stuff, though, they pay for under their student accounts as well, which is fundraised money.
Okay. And then likewise, does Madonna Valley usually do a lot towards the end of the year? See, 95% of that's remaining.
I don't know that they do all that much. And maybe Linda and I could look at that for next year to see if they need to budget as much. In some cases now, if they're only taking a few students, we leave a van. We have one of the older vans and we leave it at the high school for special education, but they have like a sign out sheet so anyone can use it. So if they're only taking, say, 4 or 5 children to something, they'll just drive that van until it brought the cost down from dispatching an entire school bus to take them.
I love to ask a question.
Maybe.
It depends on the
I was just
question.
gonna ask Julia the same thing. Do you do a bunch of field trips towards the end of the year or?
Yes, we have
Okay.
several field trips coming up.
Yeah, typically you see that in elementary schools, the last month of school is,
It's hard to plan during the winter months because of bad weather, so.
Right.
People also for us been doing like these walking trips into town and they.
So these field trips, this is essentially transport, for the most part, these budget items are transportation.
Correct.
all right, on to the next page, we're looking at continuation of regular instruction and it moves into special. You guys looking at these kind of for the, one of the, probably not the very first time, but new to it, you'll see that it says 0% remaining, but it's because the salaries have already been encumbered. So she's got this line of encumbered, so now she knows this is what they're gonna be paid for the rest of the year. It's already been taken out, so we can see, what's really left.
So then why would there be percent remaining, I guess, for the remainder of that's just because they didn't take that approach for
Well,
encumbered, but if it-
So most of the programs have, non-salary and benefit lines. So they
Okay.
got like instructional supplies. Pre-K does not. So pre-K is just all the salary and wages, and the supplies are accounted for in the school itself, not in the pre-K line.
okay,
I've been talking to the state to find out if that is how that should continue to be, or if we should put some down in there. So somebody's pay either changed a little bit, and that's why there's $300 left, but overall that should be zero or close to zero by
Okay.
the end of the year.
On page 4 for the vocational transportation. Where there's only 5% left.
You say page 5?
Page 4. Article 8.
Oh, it's been encumbered.
I was gonna say, is that all?
It's just salary and wages
Okay.
for the gentleman
Just
that
wanted to
drives
make
the
sure.
kids. Yeah, so, the fuel cost all sits in the student transportation line.
We're on page 4. You'll notice also the school administration, Article 7. Um, in the negative there for the amount rate remaining, and that's going to be due to the use of substitute.
Yeah.
You had a substitute here at Union, for quite a bit of the year, so there's a big chunk there and it's
November or
expensive.
December?
Mm,
1%.
Almost the entire, early October.
so paying a substitute admin is more expensive than having a salary full-time.
No, he's still on salary.
Depending on the
Because-
circle.
Okay.
So it's an additional expense.
Got it.
A substitute on top of having someone out.
And I'll correct that as the year goes on. I'm just waiting to decide where to pull it from.
Is the high school due to substitute costs or is that due to?
The high school is due to a personnel change with, on their, benefits.
Benefits, yeah.
Benefits.
But Warren is due to substitutes as well.
Predominantly. And I think friendship was just a correction that was made.
So who all, under school administration, who all is included in that besides obviously like the
It
principal?
would be the
committees?
principal, the assistant principal, and their secretarial staff.
Okay.
That's dedicated to their office, like, so not guidance counselors, secretaries, and those types of things, but the actual front office. secretary.
Yep.
assuming the maintenance, we're just, a lot of those things for elementaries are just waiting to be done later in the season, but. Well, plenty's left.
There is, a project that's just supposed to happen over April vacation that, we may be having a problem with the contractor being able to come, but if not, it'll be done in between the time school gets out in the end of June, so, yeah. It's not ideal to do when the kids are in school, but they're actually getting out at a fairly decent time this year compared to what we did a couple of years ago. So we should be able to fit it in then.
I'm sorry if I've asked about debt service before. But it's slower than expected.
No, we just didn't encumber all of it. There's one note we did and one note we didn't, and I'll look to see why we didn't do that. But that should come out right at 0 at the end of the year. That's the, most of it's the note on the middle school. And we get some of it through state subsidy and some of it ourselves.
How many years are left on the middle school note?
2028. We're getting there for years. I can't remember if our last payments in fiscal year 27 or fiscal year 28, but
Page 6 is the financials for the adult education program.
yeah, for those of you who are new, the adult education program we have is a partnership with RSU 12, which is the district that way, logistically challenged still after being here 6 years. So it's got like Windsor, Chelsea, it's a pretty big district. So we were in partnership with them. So we pay based on the census and we adjust that every year. So we pay a point or two more than they do. So like say 52.48, or I don't remember exactly now, 50, as far as how we split this up. So we don't pay this entire amount. That's why you'll see RSU 12's portion is $42,000 because that's their share.
Yep.
But if it goes over, they pay the difference on that.
Okay.
Time up there. And then the next page with the pink is the food service program.
And on this one, for those of you that are new, food service is funded by federal and state money. So the only amount that comes out of local tax base is $55,000 of this budget, the 1.2 million. So the state reimbursement is actually part state, part federal, but it comes to us. The Fed piece comes through the state. So we get it all as one check from both organizations. And it's usually 2 months behind because we have to wait for the month to get over to submit our piece, and it takes them another month to pay us back. So we should be on track to break even this year.
And with the most recent news buzz about USDA things and Maine, et cetera, will be affecting these numbers, or we don't know, or?
We still don't know.
Okay.
We could have a real problem because without it, we'll have $55,000.
Okay. Okay, so that's like it's a significant portion, all of it. Okay.
All of it. Any other questions about the month-end financials? Audience with the public? Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Got a lot to say.
No action items, but we are talking about the insurance rate.
So I think most of you probably know by now, the insurance came in at 14. The state had told us, and maybe 3, 4 weeks now, it feels like it's been forever, that the rate was gonna be somewhere between 3 and 14. And unfortunately, this district hit 14. I had budgeted at 10, mainly because we came in around 9 something last year, so I was thinking 10. Originally, actually, I had it at 15, but then I was like, that seems crazy, so I moved it down to 10. Turns out it wasn't so crazy. So that's where we're at right now, is the 14%. I just wanted, so when we go into voting on the budget, I just wanted people aware of that ahead of time.
So
Julia,
that was a difference of about
about
between-
260,000
260,000. From what we have in the budget.
from what we originally had,
Yeah.
correct, when the budget committee voted.
Want to talk about where is that coming from?
Yeah, do you want me to talk about that?
That's
here?
fine, yeah.
Okay, so, I went through after we got the news and, I spoke with Linda Pease, who has the most retirees this year. We have an unusual number of long-term retirees. So fortunately, Linda had advertised and it started hiring and had pretty much hiring paperwork for the 5 that had been there the longest. And so because of that, due to turnover savings, along with a teacher that retired at the middle school, who also has been here a really long time, and we know that their replacement will be, and a retiree at Union Elementary School, I was able to find between their changes in insurance and their changes in pay, all but $89,000 of the 260. Oh, and also, I'm sorry, and to the number I needed to find was the addition to, the administrative contract. So I got it down to 89,000. And then talking to Holly Doe, she has money built into her budget that's generally covered by E-rate. E-rate's a program, that's covered by the FCC. And we generally budget for it, but we are to get reimbursed 70%. So I'm proposing we take the risk that they cover the 70%. They have every single year in our history have covered that 70%. And that would be another $51,000 that I could remove. So that leaves us, I forget the exact number, $38,400 something left. And in talking with Brian Race, our proposal is to take it out of either facilities or finance. Facilities or transportation, public facilities. So we can bring that number back down to what the budget committee voted in 2 weeks ago.
So in effect, we won't have anything showing up as a deficit on that part.
If the board agrees to those proposals.
Can you go over the money from Holly Doe's budget one more time?
So each year, different things are funded by the FCC. Like one thing that's kind of easy, but it's not in her budget, just as an example, internet. Schools don't pay for internet. It's paid for by this E-rate. We don't even see the bill. So schools and libraries in the state. But there are other things that in order, kind of like our state subsidy, in order to get 15 million, we have to pony up 10 million local money. In her case, she has to pony up 30% to get the other 70%. But they always recommend you budget that 70% in case E-rate doesn't come through. So in talking with Holly, since we've always got it in back before Holly was here and historically, we were going to take the 70% out because we're feeling like the odds are that the FCC will come through and pay that 70%. That 70% equals $51,000. Worst case, if they don't, there's still a contingency amount left in the superintendent's budget of about 65,000. So we could cover that 51,000 if we had to with the contingency of 65. Wouldn't leave us much contingency, but we haven't historically used the contingencies.
I think that sounds like a really good plan, and I'm hoping that the board sees that too.
And that will keep it at that 40, 815, 815.
Right.
whatever that was.
$469 or something. Yeah, so Holly Linscott on my payroll specialist, and I tried to go through every single employee that worked here to see if if anything has changed since we pushed budget. So I feel like we picked everything we could without, leaving us too much exposure. It's always hard to know. I mean, obviously, any one of those people we hire could get married next year. They could have a baby next year. They could change their insurance, but I think we need to base it on what we know today, and that's what we know today.
Part of your thinking about taking the funding from facilities has to do with paying off a note next year.
Correct.
Right?
So there's a couple of things. So we found out that, I remember those of you that Brian spoke about this replacement of TransFinder, which is a software we use on our buses and our vans to help better facilitate, the quickest routes, the best way to get the students to school, et cetera. We're finding out that because TransFinder is going away, that the state's going to fund some of that, but we don't know how much. But then in addition to that, within facilities, one of the Seaman notes that started before I worked here is expiring in the next year. So if we take that 40 out, that we'll get that back when that note expires. So it'll just be a new year that we'll have that deficit in this budget.
If you don't know, this district has a long history of trimming the facility budget to the bone, to the point that we can't adequately maintain our facilities.
Yep.
So we should be really concerned about efforts to trim that money back, because we're nowhere close to recovering from decades of inadequate facilities maintenance. But there is something to look forward to here. If we do have to scale back to make this year's budget work, it looks like we could recover those funds as soon as the following year.
And I feel like with taking some of that $1 million from last year and putting it into a lease, we can get some of the real urgent work done. So I don't feel we're as at a bigger risk as we have been in the past. I mean, I no longer lose sleep over Julia only having one boiler. I no longer lose sleep over the roof, but the septic tank high school still haunting me a little bit. So that's the next thing to queue up.
I've got FY 25 budget and 26.
So I just wanted to make the finance committee aware that because of the unknown with the federal funding, as we talked about, the motion was to create a reserve for special education, local entitlement, a reserve for Title I and Title V. And we already have a reserve for capital improvement reserves. That I froze the budget for this current fiscal year, including hiring, unless it's, somebody comes and says it's absolute critical that we replace something, because we're late enough in the school year now, so that we can add back to the fund balance, because if we have to make all these reserves, the district's going to go back to having no fund balance. And for those of you who have been around, the district ran like that for a very long time, and I don't want the district to have it. Something catastrophic happens, like the state subsidy funding runs, it's cut again. We need to have something. So I'm hoping that'll help replenish if we have to use a lot for the reserves to cover the federal fundings. The other thing that we didn't put in the motion, and I wanted to talk to the finance committee about, is if we don't have to use the reserves for improvement of instruction, Title I, Title V, and special education, if we should consider or could consider with the capital reserve adding another $500,000 there, just so that we have that money in case something catastrophic happens. So for those of you who don't know, the reserve is money we already have, but right now, if we have it sitting in a fund balance, the district can't spend it even with board approval, because the taxpayers haven't approved for it to be spent. But if we put it into a reserve that's very specific to special education, improvement of instruction, capital improvement, the board can give the district permission to spend it for that specific item. It has to go to a board vote. I can't just decide I want to go buy something, or Brian can't. I have to bring it to the committees, and the committee approves the, I don't know, the boiler blows up at Union Elementary School. We don't have time to put it out to a public vote. We'd actually have all 5 towns would have to open elections. They'd have to do all of that. But if we have it in a reserve, that's very specific. We can spend it for those. That was going to be my recommendation, is that we add back to that reserve only if the money's there and we don't need it for those others. Oh, and also with those reserves, the board and the taxpayers agree to create the reserve, fund the reserve, but I can't move money into those reserves without the board permission, and I can't spend it. So it's a 3-step thing. So it's very controlled.
So even if the money went into the reserve for one thing, just with the board vote, we can totally shift gears and use that money for something else, is what you're saying.
No, if the reserve says capital improvement, it has to be used for capital improvement.
Okay.
All I'm saying is I can't, or the facilities director can't decide to spend it without the board being involved with how that's being spent.
Okay.
So how would that motion look?
Yeah.
as far
I
as the
actually,
budget's concerned?
I looked through our reserve information and I spoke with the attorney and he said that because of all the paperwork I'll bring next week, that'll already have the reserves. You don't actually have to vote on it. He just said, make sure the board's aware. I mean, I didn't want to just start sticking papers in front of you guys and having you sign them without being aware. But he said there's no problem with the motion, but it's not necessary for there to be a motion.
So it's not
because-
necessarily to say if you don't need to fund those other 2 reserves to just put the money back into capital.
Right, it just
Okay.
basically says it can be funded up to $500,000 with board approval. And, so we can not fund it at all, we can fund it and not use it, or we can fund it and use it. So there's 3 different.
So when we know what we need to fund, it's gonna come to us anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. So it doesn't need to be set ahead of time.
It'll either be brought to us as funding the other 2 reserves or funding the
Right,
capital.
or none if we, for whatever reason, don't need it. Although we know capital improvements is always needed, but up to the board to decide.
Yeah, I definitely would love to keep stocking away in there, even if we don't have an immediate plan for it, just because we're going to someday need it. For sure. So if we have it, it would be good to throw it in there. Because I assume we could throw it in there, we don't have to spend it in a year, we can save it forever.
It can sit there for 10 years.
Right, right.
When I spoke with John Woodson for guidance, they said but they recommend that every year you put the reserve language back into your warrants so that the taxpayers are aware of it. So it's not like you put it there and 10 years later spend it and people are like, we forgot that money was even there. They just said, be as transparent about it as you can be.
Yeah, do we make money on this reserve? I mean, is it making any fund money?
All of our money sits in a sweep account. So our money is swept every night and goes in,
Okay.
but we don't make a lot of money, but because it's safe investment, obviously it doesn't go out
Right.
into,
Okay.
but yeah, all of our money sits in the sweep.
So any money made on that is not going into that capital, it goes into our
It just
general.
goes, yeah, it just goes, and then it goes in as miscellaneous revenue, but it's not their money. It's because it's safe investments when they sweep.
So then, can I ask so we can do up to $500,000 and that's the cap on
No, it can do whatever the board.
wants? Okay.
So the ones that Noah made a motion for last time, we set them, the board set normally get for those grants.
Yes,
That way, if those grants don't come in,
we're
then we
covered.
can use it for that.
Okay.
So the only one we don't have is food service. Great, food service has their own fund balance that because it's specific to food service and it was funded by the state and the federal, we don't have to have a reserve to spend it.
Yep.
We have about 300,000, so it's not gonna get us through anywhere near a school year if we don't get funding. But there are other options. We could go back to children paying that are not free and reduced. That'll cover some of it. It won't, obviously won't fill the gap, but it will cover some of it. But we didn't set up a reserve for food service separate.
And it's too late to do that.
No, it's
Okay.
not. It's just, I'm be honest, so we don't have enough fund balance to cover all of those. So if
Okay.
everything goes south, we don't have enough.
Yeah.
So we can certainly set it up. We
Yeah.
can certainly say, let us move money if needed. The board will just have to make a hard decision of which thing to fund if everything does not come.
And If we pull out the free and reduced, do you have an idea of what meals would cost? Or how is that gonna impact when we do have to charge?
We've been historically, we haven't changed our prices in a long time because we haven't been charging, but I say probably we were at 250 when we left off, so we'd probably move them up to 3. It may cover, at this point, with the cost of food, I'd have to do an analysis to see. It would probably be really close. We do have a higher free and reduced lunch percentage than we've had for a long time because they kind of changed the way that they pull some of those students in. So I think we're at 52, I think it is, or 55, because we've been under 50 for a few years because people haven't been turning their applications in because there's no reason to when it's free, or they feel there's no reason to. So at a very simplistic level, that's implying that that difference would be all the paying children. Obviously, we have some schools that, like Julia's school, she's got so many children that the meals would cover the fixed costs of the staff. But when you have a smaller school like Friendship, we won't ever cover the cost at Friendship because we're just not enough students to cover the staff costs of running a program. And probably Prescott's a push too, because you have salary and benefits. That doesn't matter if you serve 1 meal or 1,000 meals, right? You have that same, But we haven't had, Karen Brackett told me she hasn't had any direct communications that local entitlement is at risk. So that's good. But I still think it's good we have the reserve because most of that covers the children at special purpose private school. So those children go whether we have the funds or not. So if you want, I can also have a reserve in there for food service.
If we create a reserve and just don't fund it, what happens to it?
Yeah, it just sits there as an open reserve with no money in it.
If we need it, at least it's there.
I'm not nearly as worried about that one, but I mean, as long as they're not hurt to set one up if we might do, but I'm not.
That's the only reason why I was asking. I'm not necessarily worried about
Food
the
service.
food service one, but if we can create it and then not fund it, if we don't need it.
I feel like the last communication I had was that the money was there for the food, but they had frozen the administrative costs, which means our money's there, but there's nobody to give it to us. But then there was this other communication about the whole USDA, so, and that has not been clarified to us as to what that influx would be. So I don't really know. I have faith.
All right, so is there any more about the?
No, the
budget?
26 was a talk about what we talked about at the insurance.
All right. Does finance committee have anything else that they want to discuss before we adjourn? All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
5:20.
Danny thinks that